We're live at the Corporate Security Modernization Forum TriState, and we're going to talk kindness as corporate security modernization. We are joined by Tim Wenzel, co-founder at the Kindness Games, and Mary Gamble, EVP General Counsel, MPAC USA, who we saw before. We've been on a while now, so this is the dedicated supporters of corporate security modernization staying with us. Very pleased. How are you doing, Tim?
I'm great. How are you guys doing?
Doing well. Nice to see you again, and nice to welcome Mary back from the beginning. Have you managed to catch much of the day, Mary?
I have, other than a couple darts out down the hallway. I've got a little infant at home. I'm kind of, multitasking, but have caught most of the day. It's been wonderful. Some really, really interesting perspectives.
I love it. Well, thanks for your support and for tuning in. We are still wondering what modernization means. To be honest, I think it means a lot of things to a lot of different people. We're asking it because, on the one hand, some people are trying to sell the sparkly box single solution that would absolutely transform the lives of corporate security professionals. Does that make us modern? On the other hand, we're looking at policy and procedure and people, and we're wondering if that is where we could become more modern. Previously, we've talked about duty of care. Does that make us more modern? But then the wider question came, hang on, we should have been caring for our employees anyway. So to what extent is duty of care new? But Tim, kindness, can you tell us a bit about your kindness journey, the kindness games, the perspective, and why that might apply to this sector?
Yeah, absolutely. So kindness is often misunderstood in our industry. All of us think of ourselves as ultra alpha, tough guys. There's no room for kindness here. We're here to set things straight, keep people safe. And there is room for kindness because if we look at kindness as not being nice, you see they're actually not synonyms of each other, really. They're two separate words. But at the Kindness Games, we have come to define kindness as endeavoring to identify the human on the other side of each life scenario and trying to tailor that scenario to best serve them. And so that can be terminations, which ironically, the security industry already learned how to do to reduce the risk of somebody coming back and being an active threat, or at least, a disruptor at the company, right? We do it on a Friday. We, put them in a private room near an exit to keep their dignity intact. We don't have them pack up their desk in front of their employees, all these other things. We give them good severance packages so that there's a lower chance of a negative result, right? And so in all sorts of business situations and security situations, there's a lot of room for kindness. A bunch of years ago, I designed the residential security programs for a lot of the executives at Facebook. And one of the things that we did with the people that work those residential security details is we asked them to not be cops anymore, to not be soldiers anymore, to not be security people anymore, and to actually look to facilitate access to the right people instead of denying access to the wrong people. And when you actually break out that type of mindset, you're looking to serve, to recognize the right people. You understand that the right people will have certain types of information. They'll have a certain attitude. They'll have a certain language that they use when they approach a residence. And the tone becomes much more concierge, much less security. And so in that program, which was a great success, we endeavored to identify the humans on the other side of that situation, identify who they are and what they would know and everything, and then create a more seamless experience for both the people who are supposed to be there and the people who weren't.
Which is rather nice, isn't it? Because a lot of the time when my mind is with what you're saying is drawn to school active shooters and other active shooter things, and in actual fact, not enough is dedicated to prevention. Some people say, you don't want to even meddle in that, but actually, setting up the right scenarios so that things that are bad don't happen, and that will actually nicely tie into the next panel when we talk about resilience, I think is super key. Mary, I know you're loosely involved with the kindness games in that you're big friend of the industry and everything. Where's
no, she's a friend of me.
There you go.
Friend came later. Let's
okay.
just. Yeah.
Tim's my street cred for kindness.
So what do you make of all of this, and how does this reflect on corporate security modernization for you? I
think it plays an absolutely pivotal role, and looking at it through the lens of corporate security, as we're going through this, kind of emerging from the remnants of COVID, and you're hearing the buzzwords on TV of, the Great Resignation or employees checking out and all these initiatives for work reform. I think one of the common threads is discontent at work. It's a feeling by employees that they aren't being cared for, that they don't matter, that they're replaceable, that they're fungible. And, looking at the legal side of things, most employment contracts have a clause in there that's called employment at will, which basically says you can be terminated for any reason or no reason at any time at all. So, it gives employees a sense of insecurity of, am I going to get a call out of the blue and all of a sudden I'm going to be unemployed? Am I going to devote my precious time and energy and emotion and resources into a company that doesn't love me back? And so I think it's, from the corporate side, it's how do we show that kindness to our employees, tell them that they matter, and get the kindness back from them. It's a two-way street. And, I really believe, especially in the corporate setting, is what you give, you get back. And so it's not just, we were talking about guard service roles earlier, and Tim, as you mentioned, some of the executive protection employees that you've worked with, they're stereotyped a lot in, the Hollywood setting of somebody just mindlessly staring at a screen, clicking a mouse and kind of tuning out, reading magazines because they don't really care. They've checked out. And so I think by engaging, by showing kindness, by showing that that person matters to your organization as an individual, we can move beyond that and get more engagement back and make it a safer and kinder environment.
I wonder, can I just add to that point or engage you on that point, Mary? Because that was an excellent point, actually. Yeah. This at-will employment situation, which has become the norm. It's basically how it runs in the US, for sure. It really depends on the culture and the feel of the organization to whether you feel like, ooh, if I make the wrong step, they might just let me go. Like I'm insecure in my role. Right. And that's a really important place to lead with kindness, to build an organization that actually understands and demonstrates the value of the people who work for them, CEO down to the GSOC analyst, or the guard or the receptionist at the front desk, right? And if we intentionally design a culture that inspires trust, that shows value, that brings everyone together and says, hey, you're a part of this. I forget which panel it was, but they were discussing how do we make third-party contractors, like guards, feel a part of the organization, right? I'm a big ESRM guy, but the first thing that goes to my mind, and Mary, I know you'll love this because you're a lawyer, is I say, okay, well, what is the risk around the guard force, our third-party contractors not feeling a part of the organization? Well, one, there's co-employment issues that we have to work out with legal. Like, what can we not do to make sure that security doesn't expose our organization to more legal risk, right? Compliance risk, et cetera. So that's going to be a legal HR employment law, conversation. But what's the risk if our guard force, arguably the most important part of the security apparatus, literally the first connection point with every visitor and employee, and the first eyes that are going to see any type of incident unfold, if they feel disconnected and they do not feel like they're serving an organization, how do we take steps? And a big part of that is leading with kindness, making sure that even though they don't work for my company and we can't do specific things for them, we can't treat them in specific ways because of legal issues, we can still recognize their value that they bring to the company. We can tell them how they demonstrate that value and help us reduce our risk as an organization. Like, hey, you see this product launch? Did you know, like, behind this door is the teams that actually, like, you made that happen? Like, how much more important would somebody in one of these low level positions feel if you led that way?
I think that's honorable and admirable. You know, it baffles me that maybe it isn't that way in some areas. Sadly, Matthew chimes in and says the stereotype of the guard, quote unquote, must change. As someone who looked at those CCTV monitors hours over the 15 years in business, is imperative to make these officers feel part of the team. And I think social engineering is also a risk. So Mary, obviously, we are reflecting on America, or specifically the United States, because in other countries there isn't employment at will. You know, in other countries, things like probation periods are actually just figurative that people, for some reason, adhere to because your employment rights start on day one, and there are actually different rights in different countries. Where do you think we could strike that balance? Because certainly in the tri-state area, it's known for being hard-nosed and people pushing each other out the way for taxis, and you know, it's all aggressive, right? Macho and whatever. Maybe it's not the same across all of the tri-state, but how do we reconcile that culture with how much benefit, as Tim outlined, we could get from a kindness games culture?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question, and I think the first step is kindness and communication. You know, from the employer side, there's this feeling oftentimes of, hey, I don't want to invest a ton of money and time into this new employee if I don't know they're going to stick around. I don't want to spend thousands training them and imparting these skill sets on this one person if they're just going to flake out and quit on me, you know, with no notice. Why am I investing? Just plug any warm body into this job, give them a template to follow, and off we go. The employee side says, hey, you know, I've got this job, but I'm just going to kind of plug along if it's not exactly what I want. I'm not going to communicate with my boss that I'm unhappy because I'm scared I'm going to get fired. I'll just, you know, go through the motions while I look for other jobs, perhaps, and ride it out. So I think if we can open that communication, you know, from the corporate side down, say, hey, we hired you, we are interested in you, we want you part of our team, you matter to us. We want to invest in training because we believe in you. We want to see you succeed. How do we, you know, pull out your strengths and let you shine, and kind of have that conversation from management down and say, we want you to succeed in every way possible. What tools do you need and how do we equip you to do that? You know, and then from the employee side, have a feeling of comfort that if they aren't happy or they're hitting roadblocks or hitting that ceiling or dead end, that their concerns will be met with kindness and openness, and not just, oh, well, if you're unhappy, you know, there's the door. But hey, if you're struggling, maybe it's putting you in a different role where you can excel better, or you need different tools to accomplish your job more efficiently or effectively. Or, you know, we need to adjust how we do the job. Or, hey, you're the boots on the ground, so to speak. If our, you know, our template doesn't work anymore because the landscape has changed, thanks for bringing that to our attention. Let's have a conversation and figure out how to make it better. So I think, you know, bringing kindness to the table, being more collaborative, being open to that communication is going to pay dividends.
You know, and also there's another way that you can demonstrate kindness towards your new employees, or even, you know, new vendors or whatever, is actually doing a good hiring process, right? One of the things that the kindness games designs for companies is, how do we design high performing autonomous teams? And we actually go all the way back to, hey, what is this role actually? And what type of person does it require? Competencies are great, but hey, if you hire based on competencies, like the last time you had a terrible employee, I guarantee you it wasn't because they couldn't do the job. It was something to do with their attitude, emotional state, the way they interacted with people, et cetera, right? And a lot of times, we're like, well, that was a bad employee. They're just bad people. Well, maybe you just took the wrong type of person for that type of role. And so how do we actually understand the type of people that we have in front of us, how suitable they'll be for that specific job type and role, and the team that role sits within? Because from team to team, they all have different dynamics, right? And if we can't understand this specifically about our own organizations, then we actually don't know what the heck is going on. And that's a really great way to hire with kindness, because we get the right people. We have a lot less friction. We have less of a learning curve, because most of the time the learning curve, the actual one, is easy, but it's learning how to get along with the different personalities that's difficult.
And I'll just add to that, because you brought up hiring and using that as an effective tool to find the right person. I think, I've seen this a lot in hiring processes. There's this approach oftentimes from the person, the job seeker, of, you want to win that job opportunity, which is natural. You want to be selected. And every time I've given an interview, I always try to address that head on and say, this isn't about winning. This is about making sure we're both a good fit, that you're a good fit for us, but that we're a good fit for you, and drawing out a lot of those situational and environmental, and, as Mike said earlier, Mike Gibbs, these aspirational culture questions out of the gate to say, is this going to be a good match in a week, in 6 months, in 10 years?
Right.
Not just, hey, I won the interview, I got selected, I got a job, but is this going to be a good fit for both of us?
But do you think that's a luxury that we can have now because there's not enough staff? And so we can sort of go, ooh, I'm a job seeker. Are you a good fit for me? I don't know. And if the economy crashed like it did in 2008, suddenly, vroom, we've just got millions of people applying for one role. And then you can do the whole good fit, not bad fit. Like
Right.
is it determined on the economic climate? I guess I'm asking.
You know what? I guarantee you, if you talk to any head of HR, VP of HR, they will tell you that hiring the wrong people is far more expensive than leaving roles open longer to find the right people. And the other thing is, not only are you maybe doing an injustice to that person, but if you don't hire well, if you don't find the right people that will mesh with the teams, you're doing a disservice to the teams. And actually, from a management function, from a leadership function, you're creating distrust within the team when you bring the wrong types of people in that cause undue friction and turbulence.
I mean, I can see how that makes sense from a systems thinking perspective. I can see how that makes sense. And in fact, in the chat, Jay also says it makes sense, doesn't it? Hearing this much more in forums and similar platforms, but not seeing it in action. And I wonder, are we not seeing it in action because the metrics of those recruiting, the HR metrics, are so detached from reality? They're off to do whatever HR people are off doing, maybe having a good time. I don't, and in the hiring manager is sitting there asking the right questions that you're asking, Tim, but they're just not, they're not connecting. Why is it not connecting?
Well, it's a two-way street there. And Mary, I'm sure you'll be able to chime in on this as well. We put too much burden on HR to find the right candidates. I'll tell you what, every open role I have, HR does a search, but I put 2 or 3 candidates in that I want to talk to myself as well. And when HR gives us candidates and we look at resumes, we're often like, oh, you know what? They don't have this, they don't have that on the resume. But do we actually give post-interview feedback to say like, hey, so this person wrong for the role because of this, like they're looking for this type of upward momentum. It doesn't exist in this role, right? Like I would love to think that they could kill this role in their sleep and then we could promote them to something else. But what is that something else? And we don't have that. So they're not a good fit for this role because they're going to outgrow it too fast. They have no upward mobility. And then how does that turn out? Do they leave? Best case scenario. or do they get bored and start creating problems? Worst
So-
case
Yeah.
scenario, right?
So, okay.
And so like we have to take that thought process and we have to really engage as an asset owner, right? Because if we're looking at the ESRM, the business owns the risk, but if I'm managing the team, I own the risk of that team. I am the asset owner. And so I get to make those calls and have those conversations.
But then can I bring in Risha's question here? Because it's nice. Maybe
Yeah.
we'll give it to Mary. If we always look for what the good fits, right? Imagine an entire team of runners who are all Usain Bolt, right? It's all Usain Bolt and they all run really well. It's great, right? Does it then create a very homogenous group without room for diverse opinions or differing points of view? And how do we define wrong people? And I guess that's the thing, because
Yeah.
a hiring manager it is a judge in a court.
Right.
Who's appointed them? Like, and how do we define wrong, Mary?
Right. And so, I'm not going to be naive enough to say that there aren't organizations out there that only hire, with a certain predetermined mindset and have a very homogenous organization top down. But using your example of runners, right? You've got an opening for a marathoner. Usain Bolt is a phenomenally talented athlete, but isn't going to succeed as a marathon runner. It's just never going to work. So that's sort of, I think, the mindset. Or, Tim, using your example, they may be a phenomenal person and would be an incredible asset to your organization, but it takes a talented HR personnel or manager to look at that person and go, are they going to outgrow that role in 6 months? And if so, what do we do with them? And that's where I think the disconnect is going, of finding the right fit both ways for the organization. And it's, is it a fit both culturally and, within the confines of the role as the need of the organization. So I think that's the challenge. And, of course, there's the aspirational goal of what, is our organizational culture the way that we want it to? And if not, how do we want to change it? And then are these new hires bringing us closer to where we want to be? So that's what I hope that we're implementing and making the organization stronger. But, back to that point of homogenous hiring, it's, I think, looking at, again, does this person fit the role that we need? Will they have opportunities for growth? Do they take us where we want to be?
Absolutely. And I would say it's so important to find people with different points of view who have had different experiences, see the world differently. Because when I lead a team, it's really important for people to challenge the status quo, because guess what? Everything I create is freaking amazing until it's not, because I created it. So I need people to point out, be like, hey, this used to work, but it's not working out very well. And so that's a super important part of a team.
I like that. And Andy sort of, and asks, do you use recognized benchmarks guidelines to help with these decisions? Is a benchmark the kindness games? Do you have the kindness-ometer? I don't know.
Well, as with everything, I use the ISO 31000 benchmark for risk management. Everything to me falls into some sort of risk management exercise that includes hiring. And I work with my HR teams and everything and legal teams to make sure that everything is looking good. We're trending in the right direction, etc.
Okay, I like that. And Risha says, could you resend the link? It's not what she was looking for. So that'll be good. Right. So Mary, how and why should people get involved with the kindness games, and how is it still relevant to corporate security today?
So, I think there's a number of ways to look at that. And I think one is, I think it just makes us all better human beings. And it makes the organization a better place and a more enjoyable place. These softer metrics of it being a more enjoyable place to work, people getting more job satisfaction, employers being happier with the performance of their employees. Tim, you and I had explored some metrics a while back, and I want to say that there was I think it was like a 20% reduction in workplace violence incidents. And there was a, pretty significant savings, depending on the size of the organization, in budgetary expenditures on different training programs after having implemented kindness protocols and kindness programs within the workforce. So I think beyond just the, the soft metrics, there's tangible metrics that can be achieved by implementing programs like that. And I think it's, it's something that's really easy to do. And it's, as simple as just being nicer to other people, being good human beings, and figuring out ways to just value the people that you work with. Even small little acts of kindness, of just shouting out when somebody's been an asset to a project that you've been working on, and a tiny little, hey, great job on that. Or when you're in a group setting, I mean, something that was really poignant to me is I worked with somebody previously that did a really, really great job of, in group settings, calling out work by other people. And, even if it was the person sitting at the front desk answering the phone, that they happened to catch something in particular and forward it on, or, caught something unusual or did extra work outside of the scope of their job, calling them out. And there was just always this like, ooh, me? Who, me? I did a good job? Cool. And you get this warm fuzzy feeling, and it makes you, feel really good about the job that you did and want to excel next time. So it's things like that that can really be implemented and just make it a better organization, smoother operations, and more value produced top to bottom.
And I'll add on to that. When you lead with kindness, when you foster meaningful conversations, even when they're difficult conversations, because you foster trust within the team, it creates better engagement. One of the things that I've developed, and actually I'll post it to my LinkedIn, was it the showcase featured?
Or just post it here. Just post it here.
Well, it's a document. It's an end of the year routine to help your teams wind down, to reset for the following year, so they can get that mental rest through the holidays. I've shared that out. I developed it last year. You can check out an episode of the Human Side Security, which I'm sure Phelim has. I talked about developing this because I was in a poor state of mental health at the end of 2020, to be honest. And the kindness games helped me elevate out of that state to be able to kind of re-engage people, get past the negativity that I was under. And now I've shared that out with probably like 10 different companies who are just saying like, man, I'm so burnt out at the end of the year. And then January 5th, my team still feels like they're burnt out. Well, it's because we don't help them reset, and we don't mandate the mental break. And so this is how, I'll post it to my LinkedIn page. You can be kind to your team at the end of the year so that they are ready to go and be super productive on January 5th. Because after New Year's Day, nobody comes back that week.
So yeah, and well, maybe some do. But Tim, when the Kindness Games book is written, and of course it will at some stage be written, will it
2023?
Very good. Coming up soon, a number that is increasingly coming upon us. Will it sit in an industrial or organizational psychology part of the bookstore?
Well, that remains to be seen. Although there's a guy who I'm good friends with, I'm blessed to be good friends with, Rob McKenna of Wild Leaders, who's actually going to write the foreword for the book. And he led the industrial organizational psychology department for a college near Seattle. I forget which one, for like 25 years. And he runs his own leadership group. So yeah, it'll definitely be an interesting read.
Absolutely. Well, you've got to keep us all in the loop and keeping us all informed. I think this is a good look at another aspect of corporate security modernization, because the modern corporate security function could be kind. That could be the modernized version, because we've been talking earlier today, duty of care, duty of care, duty of care. And the big point was, that's not new. We should have been doing it anyway.
Yep.
However, this is not a statutory kindness requirement, but it is something that we're not quite grasping at the moment. So I do enjoy adding this to the cadre of work for the Corporate Security Modernization Forum, TriState. Great. Well, from Tim and Mary, thank you very much for coming on. I'll give you a big virtual round of applause. And yes, I look forward to seeing you in the audience.